This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Stevenson with his own moves. Carrington. North are in front.
Hello and welcome back to North Pod. Once again, we are in late November and we're still podcasting. It's been a couple of weeks, but the draft is officially done, so plenty to talk about from the draft, which is about a week ago now if you're listening to this just after I release it. So we'll talk about that. Pre-season training has started for the younger players, so there's plenty of the classic social media posts about so-and-so's in career best form or, run training the house down in week 1 or 2 of training. So good to see that positivity's flowing down there. But yeah, we're back. Could be the last, might be the second last podcast for the season. Certainly we'll be taking a break over the summer months just to recharge, but it has been a slow drip feed of podcasts over the past month or month and a half. On today's episode, we will obviously talk about what happened on the draft nights in terms of which players we've picked up, moves we've made, and consider how happy I am with those. We might have a look at what could happen list-wise from here on, because obviously not all of our list spots are filled. We'll have a quick little overview of the list so we can kind of see what it looks like going into 2023 now that the majority of the list is in place. I'll have a go at trying to make my starting 23 again, which I did do pre-drafting and trade period. So we'll see what the side looks like, or what I think the side looks like before then. And an AFLW update. A huge win by the girls. They are through to the grand final, so we definitely will touch on that at the end of the podcast, because I've just come off watching that on Sunday afternoon, and that was it was a fantastic win by the girls, so we will definitely talk about that. It's nice to have some success there whilst the male side is not going so well. The girls are really smashing it. So that's what's on the pod for this week. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, if you could give me a subscribe and a review on your favourite podcast platform, that would be super helpful. And feel free to give me a follow on X, Facebook, etc. at North Pod Show, all good social media. That's where you can find me. All right, let's dive into what happened on draft night. The first night of the draft was really the only one that we made an impact on. The second night, we did have a pick that we ended up trading, so not much to talk about from the second night. And then we did obviously pick up a player on the rookie draft on the Wednesday. So 3 days of content, it progressively gets less interesting. Yeah, that first night was obviously where everyone's eyes were, and the big attention was what was going to happen with Harley Reid. And I think what most people thought was going to happen did happen. West Coast did take him at pick 1. I think at the end of the day, it was going to take an absolute godfather of a move to change or sway West Coast's thinking. Just, it's that classic, if you trade him out and you end up with 3 first-round picks, but Reid goes on to be a Brownlow medalist and an absolute star. I don't think there's many scenarios in which West Coast come out as the winners. So they took they took Reid at 1, and they weren't swayed by North's deals, or there was rumours that Melbourne might be a chance to move up. Yeah, they took him at 1, and we'll see how that goes for them. We then had pick 2, and as I had thought would happen, we took McKercher. That had certainly been all of the talk coming out of the experts, that North Melbourne really valued McKercher. If you didn't listen to the last podcast, he's that really typical midfielder, has been compared to Zach Merritt, a good balance between inside and outside, He's not super tall. I think he's 182 or 183, something like that. So he's a smaller mid-side midfielder in this day and age, but he's not small. So he will slot straight into that starting 23, you would think, because obviously we valued him extremely highly. And yeah, I was always happy for us to take one of those types of players, and it seemed like we liked McKerch the best, hence we took him at 2. I was a bit surprised we didn't bid on Jed Walter at 2, particularly given that our bid came next for him at pick 3. There was obviously some kind of favour we were doing for Gold Coast. No one's going to publicly say that, and I'm sure if it got out or if it was made public, I think probably North and the Suns would be in a bit of trouble, so I wouldn't expect to hear that, but it seems like there was a bit of collusion there that potentially North would take Reed or bid on Reed at 3 rather than at 2, and Gold Coast would give us a favour elsewhere, because that meant that Gold Coast had to spend, I don't know, 300 or 400 less points securing Reed. And we definitely would have taken... Sorry, I don't know if I've been saying Reed for the past 5 minutes, but Walter is who I mean there. Anyway, we bid on Walter at 3, and obviously that was matched by the Suns like it was always going to be. And then we took Duursma at 4, which I think, for me, is a bit of a polarising option. All the talk from Rawlings and Thirstfield afterwards was that we were always going to take those 2 with our first 2 picks. So they've been set on that for a while, unless they were able to move up and get Reed. It would have been interesting to see if we would have taken... Well, I guess it's like West Coast would have moved back, and maybe they don't take Curtin at 2. I don't know. But it would have been interesting to see if we would have taken Reed and McKerch if we were up that high, or if we would have taken Reed and Duursma. Anyway, we took Duursma. We picked 4. Similarly, that wasn't a surprise, but I was kind of hoping that we wouldn't, just based on the type of player he is. But they've obviously gone with get the best talent in the door, and we'll figure it out from there. And I think there is something to be said for, whilst both of these players don't fit positional needs, they're obviously... Well, the hope is that in 2 or 3 years' time, there's significant upgrades on players that we already have in those positions. So we know that we've got a ton of sort of medium-sized forwards, which Duursma is. And I think Duursma is a very similar player in terms of positional, flexibility to Cam Zerha. They're certainly not identical in terms of the way they play, but they're both half forwards who can go through the midfield. They're not quite tall enough to be key position players, but they do play as marking forwards a lot of the time. So Duursma, you would think he's going to put some pressure on players like Zerha, like Stevenson, like Eddie Ford. And, one of those players is going to fall out, and it'll be Duursma in that forward line, and maybe he's playing a little bit in midfield. And similarly, McKercher is going to probably take over from the likes of Tom Powell, Charles Lazaro, potentially Will Phillips. So those kind of, midfielders that aren't quite there yet, or that are on the fringe, McKercher is going to be an upgrade on them. So I guess that's how we have to look at it. I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't take a punt and get Curtin. Obviously, we had been at least associated with him. There'd been reports that Clarko really liked him, but I mean, go figure. He's a fantastic player. Of course, Clarko likes to look at him, but I would imagine that Clarko is more than happy with the 2 that we've taken. As it has so happened, Curtin slid all the way back to pick 8, and the Crows were able to beat out the Eagles, who were trying to trade back in to get him. So the fact that Curtin got to 8, I guess, shows you that there's a little bit of unsurety about how solid a player long-term Curtin is. To be clear, he's going to be a good player. It's just around how top-class quality he is. That being said, I think if he was from Melbourne, I think he would have got picked up a few picks earlier. I think there was a bit of he's from WA, so we're not too sure around whether or not he's going to stay. Obviously, the Crows weren't concerned about that, and they did trade up to get him at pick 8, so he slid down there. It was also hard to see Nick Watson go to the Hawks. I'd say they're probably my least favourite side, and I really loved Watson. I was super high on him similarly, I understand why we haven't got him because we do have heaps of forwards. He's just a type of forward that I think a big part of the fan base, myself included, thinks we're lacking. We were able to see what the Giants were able to do this final series in the second half of this year with their sort of fleet of smaller forwards, and I think Watson is that type of player. And yeah, I would have loved him, but similarly, I understand we've obviously ranked Duursma as a higher talent, so that's the way we've gone. It's going to really suck watching him play for the Hawks, but it is what it is. And he went at 4 in the end, or no, 5. He came straight after our pick, so touch and go there for him. But we took McKercher and Duursma, so we've picked on talent up there. Then obviously there was plenty that transpired in between. Our bunch of picks at the end of the first round ended up being 20, 22, and 23. And I was really hoping for a small forward type in that batch as well. I really thought that Collard was someone that we might go for. Like initially, last podcast I talked about Phoenix Gothard, and he ended up getting picked up by the Giants a bit earlier, so he wasn't on the board, but Lance Collard was a small forward type that I had some interest in. That being said, he's not super small. You could see him sort of fitting into that medium-sized forward bracket. So anyway, he was available. We didn't pick him up. We went with Taylor Goad at pick 20, so he was one of those two ruckmen that I had talked about. Will Green had gone to Sydney, which was all the talk, so he wasn't available. Taylor Goad was the one that we went after. And there was a feeling that Adelaide might have taken him with the pick after us. They were the one that had pick 21 directly in between our picks, so we had to take Goad there so that the Crows would not. It's hard to say whether or not we rate Goad higher than our next two, but we certainly rated him as the best ruckman available, and I think, he's not going to play this year unless there's some serious injuries to our ruck stocks, but it's great to have, a bit of security and a bit of a backup ruckman for now, and potentially a promising ruckman for the future. He's super tall, pretty mobile, just, like any ruckman that gets drafted, is going to need to put some weight on, and he's out of Adelaide, so picked up a potentially really high-quality ruckman for the future, which was definitely a need for us, having lost Goldstein and having had Jacob Edwards not work out at all. And then pick 22, we took Will Dawson, who just has the one L in his name, just W-I-L, not W-I-L-L. Will Dawson, we took him with 22. He was a late bolter publicly. Wasn't a heap of talk about him being taken that high until late, but it sounds as though we had our eyes on him for quite a while. 201 centimetre defender, also capable of playing in the ruck and in the forward line, but I think it's fair to say that we've got our eyes on him as a replacement for Ben Mackay long term, and I think similar to Goad, he's a longer term prospect. He's not even 18 yet. It's another month until he turns 18. And was, again, really tall, so is going to take some time to get some meat on those bones and thicken up. But, you can see from these draft picks, aside from those top two, those last two, Goad and Dawson, we've taken a longer-term approach with them, because you'd be surprised if either of them were playing in 2024. Again, there'd be some significant injuries occurring, I think, if that's the case, but look, anything can happen. As I said, I think potentially could be a long-term replacement for Ben Mackay. We know that Mackay took a long time to be a reliable and locked-in defender to our best 23 odds. So don't expect Dawson to be that for several years, but looks to have plenty of potential. And then I just made a note here. It was really interesting that we took him over several other key back options that were available in the draft. So I talked about Ollie Murphy on my last podcast, and he really slid down into the 40s. I'm going to stuff up this name. I'm so sorry, Zane. Zane Zakostelski, and Ari Schoenmaker also slipped past, where people thought they might get to. So all three of those were available. Sean Maker, albeit it's a little bit smaller. I think he's in the mid 190s. But they were all available, and we've taken Will Dawson ahead of them. So hopefully Thursfield and Rawlings have seen something that that others aren't. And then with pick 23, we took Riley Hardiman. I was hoping for Collard at that point, but I get it. I think, we're just trying to really bolster up that defence. He was super excited to get picked, so you love to see that. 184 centimetre halfback, touted as a Luke McDonald type. And I think there are a few people that raised their eyebrows at that and just thought, well, gee, I hope he's better than Luke McDonald, which, I get. I think we're all a bit burned from what we've seen from McDonald over the past couple of years, but, we know he's the type of player that we need. And I think alongside those other young backs in Bergman and Goda and Archer, we just need a couple of them to make it. Like, if all four of them are fails, we're in strife for that kind of our medium defenders that can rebound and move the footy. But if two or three of them, go on to be 150, 200 gamers and good players, then, that's the draft's work for us. So that was our last pick that we took. Took the 5 players there. Hardiman was the hardest one to pick just because I think, if we hadn't have taken a key back and a ruckman in the draft, there was something seriously wrong. It was just what we were going to do with that extra pick down there. Then on the second night, we traded out it ended up being pick 48. We traded out for a future 4th rounder with Port Adelaide. Rawlings and Thursfield said that we just didn't rate anyone that was left at that spot. We weren't, interested in investing in them from a draft perspective. So, we traded out for the future better than passing, so we got something, but it was frustrating that we maybe could have gotten a little bit more for that pick because we saw a couple of picks later the Saints give up a future 3rd rounder to get in. So, look, anyway, we got something that was better than nothing for pick 48, and maybe we use that next year, maybe we don't, but at least we've got the option to next year. And that was the end of us in terms of the national draft. And then Wednesday, the rookie draft, we took Finbar Maley, which is some kind of name, I hope he goes on to be something because it's an absolute banger of a name. Definitely a project player. I just want to caution everyone, he is not going to play next year. He really, to be honest, has Jacob Edwards vibes. He's going to replace that kind of player. He's a ruck forward, 197 centimetres, 20 years of age, hasn't played a lot of footy. He's slightly older than most draftees, so his body's slightly more ready, but he has not played a lot of footy. He is on the smaller side for a ruckman at 197. I think that's why he's kind of a ruck forward. And he's good insurance. We know that we were lacking some size, and you just never know what he could become. He's definitely high potential, but we know that most rookies don't make it. I think that's what we have to remember. The rookie draft primarily is there to get these diamonds from the rough, and a lot of the rookies, go on to not be much or to play 10 games and call it a day. So that's what our expectations have to be for Finbar Maley, but you never know what he could become, and we just needed a bit of extra size. So we've kind of replaced Jacob Edwards there. We've replaced Goldie with Taylor Goad. We've got that height back on our profile, and I think we've certainly filled a couple of gaps. I think from my perspective, I'm relatively happy with how the draft went for us. I think we've addressed most of the needs. Probably that small forward type we were better off addressing that need in the trade period. Like Ginnivan was available, for example. Now I don't love him, but he is a small forward that is exactly that type of player that we need. Anyway, that's probably the most glaring need that we didn't address. But at the same time, I think it's totally reasonable to say, we are not making our premiership push next year at all, or close. So the list build is definitely a work in progress, and I suspect that we'll be looking at the next couple of drafts to continue to address needs. And I think it's important also to acknowledge that the draft it's the job of our list managers to look way further than just next year when they're drafting. So I think that's why someone like Riley Hardiman, he actually could have been drafted to literally fill the need of Luke McDonald, just knowing that McDonald's certainly closer to the end than the start. We've probably drafted Goad a couple of years too late because we've had Goldie there and we just haven't wanted to let go. So I think I'm pretty happy with the draft haul, but yeah, I'm still a little bit disappointed that we missed out on Curtin and Watson. We were never going to get both of them, but to miss out on both is a shame. But that's the draft wrap. So mostly happy, and definitely picked up one or two players that could feature for us next year. The only other really North Melbourne related draft content or tidbit was seeing Jack Marnie get rookied by the Suns, following in the footsteps of Jed Anderson. He'll likely head up there for a year and get delisted. Look, good luck to him. I think I felt really bad for him that he had injuries the last couple of years and hasn't been able to show potentially his potential. It's not a great sentence anyway. But to me, he just doesn't look like an AFL player in terms of how far he can kick the ball. So good luck to him up there. I think he was the last rookie pick or very close to the last pick in the rookie draft. So obviously the Gold Coast just wanting to pick up a couple of players that aren't super young, that have got a bit of experience that can maybe fill a gap for a year or two. All right, that'll do us for the draft, I think. So in terms of the list build from here, I think, we've still got a couple of spots available. So the supplemental selection period, or SSP, opens up on Monday. It's probably open by the time you're listening to this. Players can be added to lists or asked to train on with the potential to get a list spot. So we might have left a spot open to potentially snag a player here, or we might be looking for that mid-season rookie draft for next year, making sure we've got a spot available for that, because this year we had to put Jack Marnie onto the long-term injury list in order to take Robert Hanson Jr. during that draft. So we do still have a spot or two open. It was hard for me to figure out exactly if it's one or two or if it's three. I think it might be two, but I'm not certain. So yeah, we've got a couple of spots available. I haven't heard anything in terms of who we're likely to look at if it's going to be in the SSP, but typically they're delisted players or players that are playing at local or VFL level that can potentially fill a need. So I'd expect there to be a player or two more that we add, but they're going to be fringe players, depth players, or sort of taking a punt like we have with Finbar Maley. So that's what the list build is looking like from here, and it sounded like Rawlings and Thursfield had some ideas around what they were going to do there. Let's take a look at the list. So I've got my Excel spreadsheet up here. I know that you can't see it, but I've just broken up the squad in terms of position, and I know that there's some that sort of can play in multiple spots, but based on how I've broken it up, I'd say we've got in the medium small defender market, I think we've got 7 in Fisher, Sheasel, Hardiman, Goda, Bergman, McDonald, Archer. But Fisher, I think we know, can play midfield and forward, but it sounds like he's going to play in the back line for us, and we know that Sheasel was drafted as a forward, but it sounds as though he might stay in defence for the time being at least. We'll wait and see. Depending on how you feel, you could also put Aiden Core as a medium defender. He's in that sort of mid-190s range, so he can play as a tall, can play as a small. I've classed him as a tall, and I've said we've got 6 of them now, but it's an inexperienced group, that's for sure. Griffin Logue, who we know is out until at least the middle of the year. Toby Pink, Biggie Newen, Will Dawson, Aiden Core, and Cal Dawson. So 6 there, but really Griffin Logue is the only noted key position player there with some experience. Aiden Core is sort of in the middle of the pack there, and obviously has experience, but isn't super tall, you wouldn't want Core playing on the first forward of the opposition. So that's what our defensive stocks look like. I've also put Charlie Comben down as just a key position player because whilst he has played forward for us, there's certainly been talk of him going and playing centre half back next year. So I'm aware of that. I've got him as a swingman essentially. As the pure rucks, I've said Hamish Free, Taylor Goad, and Tristan Jerry. So I think we know that Cherry is going to be our starting ruck for next year. And then ruck forwards, Coleman Jones, Maley, and you could also put Charlie Comben in that spot if you wanted to. In terms of the mids, I think there's 13 players that are absolutely midfielders. You couldn't argue on many of these. And that's either inside mids or wings or, there's lots of different types of mids here. But we've got Greenwood, Tucker, Lazaro, Stevens, McKercher, Scott, Thomas, Shields, LDU, Simkin, Wardlaw, Phillips, and Powell. So obviously, we've seen Tucker play half forward and half back. We've seen Taron Thomas play half forward, but I think, they're all midfielders primarily. In the medium or small forward, we've got 10 of them: Cooper Harvey, Blake Drury, Robert Hansen Jr., Curtis Taylor, Braden George, Duursma, Ford, Paul Curtis, Zerha, and Stevenson. And then just the one tall forward in Nick Larkey, but we've got obviously Coleman Jones and Comben as those either swingmen or ruck forwards. So that's what the list profile looks like. I would love to see another out-and-out tall forward. So I think that's possibly something that we could be trying to address in the future. And the tall defensive stocks, there's going to be some busts in there for sure, like Pink, Newen, Dawson. Not all four of them are going to work out, you would have to say. So that's what it looks like. I thought I'll try and build what I think the starting 23 for next season looks like here, like I did a couple of months ago. I won't make the same mistake as I did last time. I'm going to chuck LDU straight into a midfield role because I did forget him last time until very late. So I'm going to chuck him in. And I'll just try and talk about what I'm thinking about as I'm placing the players in here. So I guess if I start in the defence, look, I'll chuck Logue in there and then we'll swap him out for the round one side. So I think Logue obviously is a shoe-in. I think Sheasel is a shoe-in. I can chuck him at half-back. I think Fisher definitely plays. So maybe he goes in a back pocket or half-back, one of the two. McDonald's the captain, so he's definitely in there. I'll chuck him in there for now. And then which of these other players is going to be the other tool? So Pink, Newen, Will Dawson, Core, Kel Dawson. It's not Will Dawson to start us off. It could be Toby Pink just to get a bigger body in there. I'm going to put Kel Dawson there for now. And then I've still got a half-back spot. Look, I think Goda is ahead of Hardiman, Bergman, and Archer for now, so I'm going to put Goda there. So that's the back six at the moment: Fisher, Callan Dawson, McDonald, Goda, Logue, Sheasel. Another one of those backs is going to get into the side, and obviously Logue is out injured to start the year, but we'll come back to that. Let's look at the forward line now. So obviously Nick Larkey slots in at full forward. Who's else is a certainty? Zerha, when fit, is a certainty. He can go there in the forward pocket. Gee, there's not a lot of other absolute certainties there. I think Stevenson plays. I'll put him up at half forward. Look, it depends what Comben's doing. I think Comben's in the side, so I'm going to chuck him at centre half forward, but maybe I'll have to change that in a minute. I think, to be honest, Colby McKercher could play half forward to start the year. Braden George, I don't think starts the year. Robert Hansen Jr., I don't think starts. Paul Curtis and Eddie Ford maybe. So if I chuck Ford up there and a half forward and Paul Curtis in a forward pocket. So at the moment, it looks like Jaden Stevenson, Charlie Comben, Eddie Ford, Paul Curtis, Nick Larkey, Cam Zerha. I'm going to leave it like that for the minute. Tristan Xerri's going to be our starting ruck, and I know that gives some people chest pain, but he just is. And then I've already put LDU in there. I'm not going to forget him. So Wardlaw is going to be in the middle. Let's chuck him there. Obviously, Simkin, the other captain, is going to be in there. Let's chuck him in there. Goodness me. So then Bailey Scott on the wing, on one wing, and Dylan Stevens, we think, is probably going to slot onto the other wing. So at the moment, that midfield is Dylan Stevens, George Wardlaw, Bailey Scott, Tristan Xerri, LDU, and Jai Simkin. Taron Thomas is definitely in, but he's going to have to go on the interchange bench. And I've got 3 other interchange spots. So I do think McKercher will play round 1. So I'm going to put him on the interchange as well. Then there's probably a forward type and a back type on the bench. So possibly it's Miller Bergman. I'm going to chuck him on the bench. And as a forward, maybe... Look, Braden George and Zane Duursma, I don't think will play round 1. Look, maybe it's a Tom Powell or a Will Phillips, like Liam Shields, Darcy Tucker. Could be Coleman Jones, actually, as a ruck forward. I'm going to put him there for now, Coleman Jones, and then we'll see. And then I'm going to put Will Phillips there as the sub. So I'm just going to read through what I've got, and then we'll see if I do want to make any adjustments. So full back line, Fisher, Callan Dawson, Luke McDonald. Half back line, Josh Goda, Griffin Logue, Harry Sheasel. Centre line, Dylan Stevens, George Wardlaw, Bailey Scott. Half forwards, Jaden Stevenson, Charlie Comben, Eddie Ford. Full forward line, Paul Curtis, Nick Larkey, Cameron Zerha. Rucks, Tristan Xerri, LDU, Simkin. On the bench, Taron Thomas, Colby McKercher, Miller Bergman, and Callum Coleman Jones. And the sub, Will Phillips. And really, that could be Tom Powell. Could be someone like Curtis Taylor. Could be someone like Hugh Greenwood, Darcy Tucker. There's a lot of options there. Now, I know it's just rumours at the moment, but I do think that Charlie Comben is going to play centre-half back. And Griffin Logue isn't going to be in the side at the start of the year. So if I just move Logue out and I put Comben at centre-half back rather than centre-half forward, then I'm going to move Coleman Jones to centre-half forward. And then I've got another spot on the bench. So the bench is currently Taron Thomas, Cold McKercher, Miller Bergman. Look, I guess what I should do then is move Will Phillips onto the actual bench. And then it's just around who else is getting on as the sub. And it could be Powell. I mean, he's probably first in line based on the players that are here. I mean, Hardiman could get a game early. Jackson Archer could get a game, but I don't think we'd have 2 like Archer, Bergman, Goda, Fisher. I don't think they're all playing at the same time. Aiden Corr's not in this side at the moment, and I do think that he will be. I've forgotten him. Well, he's not going to be the sub, so someone's going to have to come out. Like maybe Bergman's going to the sub and Corr's going to the bench. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, though. It probably really has to be that maybe Corr plays over Callan Dawson. God, there's a lot of choices there. It's where those spots where it's pick 20, players picked 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Like that is where it gets tough. Cooper Harvey was good for a bit. Look, Greenwood is depth. Tucker, who knows? Tom Powell, who knows? God, it's hard. It's really hard, which is what we want. I think realistically, Corr has to start because that defense is otherwise pretty inexperienced if it's just Comben and Callan Dawson down there. So maybe it's Core and Comben at centre-half back. And then Callan Dawson comes out for now. He goes back to being a tall defender. Logue is injured. And maybe it's Thomas, McKercher, Bergman and Phillips on the bench, and then someone like Tom Powell or Darcy Tucker is the sub, and I'm going to go with Tom Powell for now. Don't know how I feel about it. I'll just read it one more time. Fisher, Core, McDonald, Goda, Comben, Sheasel, Stevens, Wardlaw, Scott, Stevenson, Coleman Jones, Ford, Curtis, Larkey, Zerha, Cherry, LDU, Simpkin, and then on the bench, Thomas, McKercher, Bergman, Phillips, and the sub, Powell. I think in terms of the players that I haven't selected there that definitely are going to get games early, I think Callan Dawson's going to get games. I think Archer and Hardiman are going to get games early. I'm not sure out of Pink and Biggie Newen which of those is further ahead. My suspicion would be Pink. Free and Goad won't play. Maley won't play. Greenwood and Tucker and Shields are definitely there as depth players, and they will play games, I think. And then in terms of those medium, smaller forwards, I think Duursma plays, but I'm not sure he plays right away. Similar to Braden George. But that's it. I'm not sure about Cooper Harvey, Blake Drury, Hanson Jr., Curtis Taylor. I don't think that they're in the top 25 at the moment, but obviously injuries are going to happen. They will get their chance. It's just, how soon that is or under what circumstances. That is my best go at it. I'm not going to revisit this until probably much closer to round one. Just, we'll watch how the preseason goes. There'll inevitably be some injuries. And there's always that one player that pops up in preseason and just does something that you were not expecting. And maybe it is that Sheasel's going to go forward, and that gives you opportunity for an Archer or a Hardiman in the back line. There's always something that you don't know from the outside. So that's my prediction. I'll chuck that up on social media, and you can properly unpack it, and we'll see what we think. Last talking point, we're going off the boys now. We are on to the AFLW. And I have been recording for a bit now, so I'll try and keep it pretty efficient here. Just a massive backup performance to defeat the Crows. They really got out of the blocks and kicked the first couple. So for the most part, they were able to just defend that lead. The Crows did get in front at one point, but not for long. We kicked a goal and reclaimed the lead. It was just a massive performance. Talia Randell was amazing. She was the difference in the forward line. Kicked two goals too. Was immense. Just crashed packs, took some good grabs. Yeah, was massive. And I think without her down forward, like Sheila was pretty quiet. Emma King also pretty quiet. Like she was the tool that really made a difference all game. I thought Sarah Wright was fantastic in defence. Really good intercept game, and Jazz Ferguson's got a lot of credit this year, but Sarah Wright played out of her skin today. Through the middle, it was actually, it was the normal crew there, but Jenna Bruton was massive, particularly in the third quarter. I think she had 13 touches. She had the usual support from Garner and Riddell and Mia King, but yeah, Bruton was just an absolute bull. And whilst, some of her kicking wasn't sensational, it just got the ball forward. And that is, finals is just about a territory game and getting that ball in your forward line and sticking it in there. So Bruton, I thought, was the difference in the middle. And the only other one was Ellis O'Loughlin. I thought she's had an up and down year, but she had a really clean game and changed up a couple of times. I thought she was fantastic as well in that sort of high half forward role, which we know is a really hard role to play. So yeah, it was fantastic that they were able to close it out and lock down, take up that clock in the last 3 or 4 minutes. It was nervous, but to get across the line by 1 point was absolutely fantastic. So massive win by the girls. They will now play Brisbane in the grand final on Sunday at Icon Park. So Brisbane just got over the line against Geelong. whilst, you'd probably prefer to play Geelong, I think playing Brisbane, it gives us that chance to just go bang, bang, bang and beat the other 3 top 4 sides on the way to winning it. So finally broken through to play in the grand final. Massive opportunity. We're playing it not at home, but in our home state, and Brisbane has to travel, so it is it's essentially a home game for us. Sunday afternoon, get there if you can. It's going to be a fantastic game, fantastic day, regardless. Like, obviously, the girls will be super upset if they don't win it, but even if they don't, I think the fact that we've beaten Adelaide and Melbourne on the way to the grand final, they've finally been able to break through and make the grand final, and sometimes, getting there is half the battle. So hopefully one more game, one more win from the girls. Hopefully Jasmine Garner can win the best AFLW player on Monday night. She's owed that much, but we'll have to wait and see. And that is it for the podcast. I don't know if I'll podcast again before sort of February next year, or around the start of the season. If the girls get up, there's ever a chance I'll want to jump on and do one final podcast for the year, but we'll wait and see. So if not, thanks so much for the support all year from all my fans. It's been a fantastic first year of the podcast, and I'm looking forward to doing it again next year, and already got some ideas around how things could change next year. So yeah, just a massive thanks to everyone who's listened and sent me a message, or just supported me through the podcast this year. And hopefully I can rest up and we'll build the North Pod community next year with a more successful North Melbourne season. Hopefully, I think that was the worst part of doing the podcast this year, was just loss after loss after loss. It did grind on me. So hopefully a couple more wins next year and we can be on the way up. Hope everyone has a fantastic week. Only a month out from Christmas now. The year flies by. And I will speak to you next podcast. Go North and go Girls. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. Please subscribe to the podcast on your app and give me a rating or a review if you can. I'd really appreciate it. You can find me on all social media at North Pod Show. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, you name it, I'm there. I'll see you next episode.